Young Lucius Tarquin stands to one side of the training room, watching his aunt perform a series of stabs and cuts on a training dummy. She moves fast, her blade whistling through the air, and it seems as though she never strikes from the same direction. Wiping away a bead of sweat, Aurelia turns and sees him. She quirks an eyebrow and says, "Nephew, what are you doing down here?" "Kaito said I should practice my routines." She nods and gestures to a rack of training weapons. "Then you should get to it." He crosses to the rack and pulls off a short training staff. Aurelia watches him as he approaches a dummy and begins the regimen. After a few swings, he stops and looks at her. He asks, "Why do we have to train like this?" "Because the forge is a dangerous place, and it's important to be prepared to defend yourself. The Tarquin name is only a protection while you are here on Breach. Out there, it will not stop someone from trying to kill you. You have to be ready to fight." Lucius holds up the staff. "I don't see how this is going to help. When do I get to learn something cool, like what you're doing?" Aurelia looks at the dagger in her hands, and then to the empty doorway. They are alone. She smiles and says, "I suppose it wouldn't hurt if I showed you a few moves, but there are good reasons why we start with the staff. When you take up a blade, you have as much chance of cutting yourself as your opponent. Remember that." Young Lucius runs to the rack and grabs a knife. In his hands, it looks more like a short sword. Carefully, he walks to Aurelia's side and says, "I understand, Auntie." Looking down at his young face, Aurelia rests a hand on his shoulder. "Then this is your first lesson. A knife is a tool. It can be used to cut cables, to pry open panels, to slice your dinner. But when you wield it against an enemy, you have to get close to them to use it. Never draw a dagger in a fight unless you are prepared to look into your enemy's eyes and watch them die." Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures. As always, I'm your game master and solo player, Steve Morrison. On this week's episode, Lucius deals with the aftermath of the High Talon's death and the still present threat of the Ascendancy AI Victor. Find out what happens on episode 33, A Better Way. Lucius Tarquin stares into the eyes of Evro Idebrin as his life fades away and the High Talon of the Ironhawks drops to the floor, dead. Lucius is holding this bloody knife in his hands, and he looks at it, and for a moment he's shaken. He's killed in battle before. He's fought and struck down enemies before, but never before has he been this close. Never before has he seen death so close at hand, and he is for a moment shaken and frozen in time, staring at this bloody blade in his hand. Now, last episode, he had to make a difficult choice, and that difficult choice was to pursue the High Talon or to help Adelie against Victor. And he chose to pursue the High Talon. We now know what happened when he did that. But I think because he had to make a difficult choice, I think there's a chance that Adelie is in serious trouble with Victor now. So we're going to start off this episode by asking the Oracle. I think it is almost certain that Adelie is being overwhelmed by Victor's power because Adelie has endured so much over the last few days, over the last few weeks, really. I think even though she may be more powerful than Victor, she's more fatigued than Victor. And so I'm going to say it's almost certain that she is going to be in some sort of peril. So we're going to ask the Oracle. Here we go. 18, which is close, but it is a yes. So she is in peril. So I think Lucius is frozen in this moment as he is staring at the dagger in his hand. He's staring down at the body of the High Talon, and he hears shouting coming from behind him, and he's sort of in this fugue state for a moment. And then he shakes out of it and turns around and sees that Adelie is on her knees, her hands outstretched over her head. And it's as if a bubble of electrical energy is being forced down around her. The orb, Victor, is floating up above. And I think Lucius looks around and can see that Aurelia and Lieutenant Mila are trying to fire on Victor, but their shots are being sent to either side. And Adelie is in danger of being crushed under the weight of this field that is collapsing around her. And Lucius is going to have to do something. So I think he is going to look around and see what he has to work with, because obviously just shooting at this thing is not going to solve the problem. So I'm going to do a quick gather information to see what around might be useful to face off against Victor. It's plus wits. Plus 3. 7 on the action die, a 4 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So the information provides new insight, but also complicates the quest. Envision what you discover, then take plus 1 momentum. So my momentum's at 4 right now. It's going to go up to 5. And looking around, Lucius is going to, let's see, he is in this cargo bay that holds this energy, and now it's locked in and fixed. So power has been restored to this place. And I think Lucius is looking around, and maybe he is looking for some sort of conduit or something like that that he can use to either redirect energy in such a way that it might get through Victor's shields. And he sees a series of panels, and maybe he gets an idea. And he's going to run over to those panels, and he is going to attempt to hack into them, and is going to attempt to use one of the arms that carries these containers around, and is going to try and redirect it so that it grabs Victor and takes him into possession. So we are going to go ahead and do this plus wits again, as it's expertise, focus, and observation as we face danger trying to hack into the system. And I'm also going to use plus 1 for my tech asset, and that's going to get me to plus 4 on this. 7 on the action die, a 3 and a 9 on the challenge dice is a weak hit. Now, because of my tech asset, if I get a weak hit, I can choose to press my luck. If you do so, reroll all dice and add plus 2 instead of plus 1. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to press my luck here, and I'm going to try and hack in again, this time at plus 5 instead of plus 4, hoping for that strong hit. 9 on the action die, a 5 and an 8 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. So we succeed and get to take plus 1 momentum. That is going to take his momentum up to 6, and Lucius is able to take control of this crane, essentially, and releases one of the canisters that it is holding, and swivels it around, and is going to attempt to maneuver it and attach it to Victor. And I think this is going to be a wits roll. I don't think it's going to get the plus to like hacking or optimizing or disrupting, because I think we already did that. So this is just a matter of, can Lucius use his wits to attack Victor with this thing and get a hold of the AI's orb? So there's going to be +3 on this. Here we go. 8 on the action die, a 3 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So successful, but at a troublesome cost. Make a suffer move, -1. So I think that is just going to be a loss of momentum, as it takes a moment. So Adderley, again, is being forced down under the pressure of this electrical energy that is closing in around her. She's struggling against it, but Lucius can see that she is flagging, that her strength is weakening, and that she is growing tired. And she is looking up at him, and there's this pleading in her eyes. And Lucius swings around with this assembly that can connect and like latch onto things, and is going to reach forward and grab a hold of the orb. And Lucius is going to then try and take it from there, and is going to attempt to essentially drive it into one of these vessels, one of these containers with the energy, in hopes that submerging it in one of these things is going to burn and melt the AI's shell. This time, however, he's got this situation set up, but this time I'm actually going to roll a battle for this, because the battle move says when you fight a battle and it happens in a blur, envision your objective and roll. And so this is basically all happening very quickly as Lucius is trying to grab a hold of Victor and slam him into one of these containers with this magma. And I think Victor is firing electrical bursts. He's not going to go quietly, let's put it that way. So this is going to be a battle move, and I think this is going to be edge in this case, because I'm waffling back and forth between edge, which is fight at range or using your speed and the environment to your advantage, or fight using careful tactics to outsmart your foes, which would be wits. But I don't think it's wits here, because I think it is all about speed and using the environment to his advantage. So we're going to go plus edge on this battle move. We are sitting at 5 momentum. My edge is 2. Here we go. 5 on the action die, a 4 and a 9 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So you achieve your objective, but not without cost. Pay the price. So I think that Victor, encased in this orb, is slammed into one of these canisters, and the quartz orb that contains Victor is submerged inside of this and melts pretty quickly, I think. Let's roll pay the price and see what our outcome on this is. 8. You create an opportunity for an enemy. Okay. So I think the most obvious question here is, does the destruction of the crystal destroy Victor? And I think it is unlikely that it does. I think that normally the destruction of an orb would probably damage or destroy an AI, but I think because they are in this Ascendant facility and because there is so much Ascendant tech around, that it's possible that Victor can jump from the orb into the station and cause problems down the line. So I think it's unlikely that this is going to destroy Victor, so let's go ahead and ask the Oracle, 76 or greater. 100, which means yes, it destroys Victor. So the AI is submerged in this molten, powerful energy, and the orb disintegrates, and Victor this whole time is calling out and saying, "I am the harbinger of your destruction. You will not defeat me. You will not defeat my plans. I will be victorious. And it continues on. They can see as the crystalline shards just melt away. And then there is no more sound from Victor. So that was the obvious answer, was that Victor was the enemy who had an opportunity created by this weak hit on that battle move. But Victor's gone. And I think, real quick, I'm going to mark some progress on my vow. So find the artifact and stop the Ironhawks from gaining control of it and causing another cataclysm. So I marked 2 ticks of progress, because it's an extreme vow, for defeating the Bloodhawks, 2 ticks of progress for defeating Madame Brine, and 2 ticks of progress for defeating the High Talon. I think I will also mark 2 ticks of progress for defeating Victor. So that takes us to 4 full boxes of progress and 2 ticks in the 5th box of progress on this vow. So Victor's gone, the High Talon is gone, Madame Brine is gone, and most of the Bloodhawks are gone. 4 of them survived, and because they were sent off to this sort of fake signal that Lucius created, saying that Lodestar soldiers were landing. So maybe the opportunity is them returning, but I feel like at this point, the Bloodhawks are not going to be that distinctive of a threat. So I think the opportunity created for an enemy, at this point, the Ironhawks are still the primary enemy here. So let's ask the Oracle again. We're going to ask if the Ironhawks have defeated Lodestar in the space battle outside. And I think it is 50-50 on this. 44, which is a no. No, they have not. So the Ironhawks and Lodestar are continuing to fight in space. Let's ask one more question of the Oracle before I make a unilateral decision here. So, is there another enemy that has not been revealed yet? I'm going to say it's unlikely. So 76 or greater. 98. Yes, there is another enemy that has not been revealed yet. Is it Ukames? I mean, we had this interaction with this Ascendant. There was sort of an alignment of purpose in the moment of restoring power, but we don't actually know what Ukames's goals are beyond bringing back his people, and we don't know if bringing back his people means getting rid of the humans, these interlopers within the Forge. So let's ask the Oracle. Again, I'm going to say 50-50 on this. Is Ukames this hidden enemy? 30. No, he's not. So Ukames is not the enemy, which means there is someone or something else out there that wants to gain power here. Boy, I don't even know where to start with that. So let's go to action and theme and see if we can get a sense of what or who this might be. So the action is going to be 52, which is hide, and the theme is going to be 3, alliance. Hide, alliance. Okay. So way back, a few episodes ago, we introduced Dr. Brennan Petrov, a scientist from a station that Lodestar came across as they were traveling to the World Seeder. And they brought him on board. They assigned him to Lucius's team because he is an expert on the Ascendancy and on Ascendant technology. He is also focused on discovering the link between Paragons and the Ascendants and humans and how he can unlock that potential. And when we rolled up Dr. Petrov, we rolled up that he was deceitful and suspicious. So I think it only makes sense now that he is the hidden enemy. And so Dr. Petrov, who did not want to come down to this deck, is back where Ukames is. And his hidden alliance has to be with some group that is obsessed with creating paragons. And he now, like, seeing this site, realizes that the answers to a lot of those questions might be here. So he is trying to pull this information out of the computer systems while Ukames is doing other things and is distracted. And so he is trying to do that. And let's just keep asking the Oracle to see how that's going for him. So is he able to pull the information that he needs out of the system? Let's say it's unlikely. I think it would take a lot longer for him to discover this. So let's go ahead and roll. 87. Yes, he has. So Dr. Petrov has ripped the information on paragons from the computer systems on board the World Seeder, and he now has, I think, all the information he could want or need to at least experiment with the idea of giving himself and others these paragon abilities. And I think he has figured out through interacting with Adelie and through his quick study of this information that bonding with an artificial intelligence from the Ascendants is part of what gives humans that paragon ability. And so he is going to slip away from Ukames and is going to go and try and find Method, who is the AI for this station, thinking that if he can reactivate Method, he might be able to himself become a paragon. What a twist. Who even knew? I guess I maybe knew that Dr. Petrov was allied with somebody. I think I even said a few episodes back when we introduced him that maybe he was allied with the Ironhawks, but maybe not. Maybe he was just keeping secrets from Lodestar, and that was why he seemed deceitful and suspicious. But now we know that he is allied with someone entirely different, and he's a lot closer to achieving his aims than I think the High Talon of the Ironhawks ever got. One more question for the Oracle before we sort of wrap up this section, which is, does Ukamesh notice that Dr. Petrov has stolen information and left to go somewhere else, and then therefore contacts Lucius to let Lucius know that, what is your human doing? I think it is likely this time that Ukamesh notices, because he has been around for thousands of years and is pretty smart and is pretty focused on making sure that his people return. And I think part of that is keeping an eye on all the data that the station holds so that it doesn't get misplaced. So I think it's likely. So 26 or greater is going to be a yes. 7. He does not notice. Okay, the Oracle is really just throwing me for a loop here. So Ukames does not notice immediately. Eventually he will notice that Dr. Petrov is gone, but he does not notice immediately. So we cut back to Lucius and the rest in the heart of the station, where this power source is pumping this magma into the station, and now the station has regained power. Lucius jumps off the console that he was on and runs over to Adelie, who is on her knees, just panting, and he crouches down beside her and pulls her up and says, Adelie, are you all right? Are you okay? And she, sort of blinking, eyes heavily lidded, looks up at him and says, did we win? And Lucius smiles and says, we did. I kind of can't believe it, but I think we did. And she returns his smile and sort of reaches up and brushes his cheek with her hand and says, I knew we would. You've led us to victory, Lucius. I need sleep. And she kind of passes out for a minute, and Lucius is like, Adelie. And I think at that point, Mila and Aurelia come running up, and Mila sort of bends down, maybe pulls out some sort of medical device and is scanning Adelie, and they say to Lucius, She's going to be okay. Don't worry, she's just passed out. She's not injured. It just seems like she's maybe a little dehydrated and a little tired. So let's just let her rest for a moment. And Lucius nods, and they kind of lay her down on the deck and try to make her as comfortable as possible. And Lucius stands up and looks to Aurelia. And I think Aurelia has, after they sort of determined that Adelie was okay for the moment, Aurelia wandered off. And when Lucius turns to find her, he sees that she's standing over the body of the High Talon. And he walks over to her, and she looks at him and she says, "Are you all right, Lucius?" He doesn't say yes. He doesn't say that he is okay. He just nods. And Aurelia reaches out and puts one hand on his shoulder. And then, we haven't done this in a while, but I think we should mark a connection here. So with this progress, it's going to take Aurelia's track up to 6 out of 10 on this track. And she kind of rests her hand on Lucius's shoulder and then pulls him in for a hug as she says, "I'm proud of you, Lucius. You did well. I can't believe you beat him." And Lucius says, "I can't either, Auntie. He's dead." And she squeezes his shoulders and says, "You did the right thing. We fought and we won. But the battle's not over yet, Lucius. We have defeated them here, but Nishana and Lodestar are still fighting outside. We have to contact Nishana. We have to contact the Ironhawks and make this battle stop." Lucius reaches down and removes the dagger from Evro Idabrin's hand. The well-made and ornately designed dagger of the High Talon of the Ironhawks. And he says, "You're right. Let's get back to Ukames and see if he can open a comm channel, and we'll see what we can do." And they are going to move out. They're going to pick up Adelie, and they're going to carry her back towards the laboratory of Ukamesh. I don't think we need to roll for that. I think it's relatively straightforward for them to get back. I think when they get back, Lucius looks around and says, "Chief Architect, where is Dr. Petrov?" The Ascendant looks around and says, "I do not know. I'm not sure when he left." And Lucius frowns a little bit and says, "Now that we have the power back on the station, can we open communication channels?" And the Chief Architect says, "Yes, of course, that is a relatively simple thing." And he moves over to the control panel and enters a few sequences, and Lucius sees a number of comm channels. And he is going to open up a comm channel to both the Winnower and the Emancipation. The Emancipation looks like it has been blasted and is in poor shape, but it is still fighting. The Winnower and the other Ironhawk ships are still in good repair, though it definitely seems as though the Lodestar fleet is putting up a good fight against the Ironhawks. So Lucius is going to open a channel basically to the whole fleet, an open channel. And he stands before this video. I imagine with the Ascendant technology, they can actually project like a holographic image of Lucius onto the ships. And he is standing there, and he is going to hold up the dagger of the High Talon, and he says, Ironhawks, Lodestar, listen to me. I am Lucius Tarquin, and I have defeated the High Talon in battle. And he holds forward that dagger. He says, "This is the High Talon's blade. I have defeated him, and I have taken it from his body. I call for an end of hostilities. Ironhawks, stand down. Lodestar, stand down. We don't have to fight over this station anymore. The High Talon is gone. It's time to choose a new path." And we're going to do a couple things here. So first of all, we're going to secure an advantage using the knife as essentially a prop, as something that Lucius is using to justify his speaking with authority on this. And that is going to be plus heart on that secured advantage. 6 on the action die, a 6 and a 3 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So on a weak hit, I can choose one. I can either take +2 momentum, which would take me up to 7 momentum, or I could add +1 to my next move. I'm going to go ahead and choose to take +1 to my next move, because I think that makes sense based on using this dagger as part of this speech. And I don't think Lucius needs to compel Nishana and the Lodestar fleet to stand down, but he definitely needs to compel Captain Simeon and the Ironhawk fleet to stand down. So this is going to be, again, plus heart and +1, so he's rolling at +3 on this compel. 7 on the action die, a 2 and a 10 on the challenge dice for a weak hit. So as above, but their agreement comes with a demand or a complication. Envision their counteroffer. So this goes back to the early parts of this season. We know that Captain Simeon holds some sympathy for Lodestar and for Nishana Aerith in particular. They were old comrades in the Ironhawks back before Nishana was exiled. I think he respects her. He doesn't want to fight her anymore, and especially now that the High Talon and his entourage are gone, he doesn't want to continue this fight. But he also can't return to the clan Idebren and tell them that he just withdrew. He needs to come out of this with a win. Captain Simeon's voice comes through the comm channels, and he says, "All Ironhawks, stand down. We will honor this ceasefire, Lucius Tarquin, but we will not surrender the station to Lodestar. This station should be available to all. If you disagree, then we must continue this fight. But I cannot return to my clan and tell them that I left such a powerful Ascendant artifact in the hands of a group of rebels. If both of our fleets withdraw from the artifact, we can have peace." And Nishana comes through as well and says, "And how do you expect to enforce that, Simeon?" Captain Simeon says, "Tarquin, you are and have proven yourself to be honorable. I trust that as a herald, you will hold the information that the Ascendant Station possesses as sacred, and will not dispense it to anyone until all of the clans have agreed." And Nishana says, "That is not acceptable to me. You know, Simeon, the clans will never allow us to have any say." And Simeon says, "Captain Aerith, I have always respected you. I will speak on your behalf. The High Talon is no more, and though his family may smart from that loss, they will understand the needs of honor have been met. I will make them understand. and I will speak on Lodestar's behalf. Perhaps it is time for there to be another clan. Lucius looks around, and I think he looks over at Ukumesh as well, and he hasn't told the Ironhawks, he hasn't told Lodestar, he hasn't told anyone other than the people who are around him about this living ascendant who is still on this station and who, by rights, controls this station. So Lucius himself doesn't have, in his mind, any right to give away any of the information that is here. And so he says, I will hold that position. I will keep this station safe and secure and protected from all of the clans. I swear it. I swear it on my life and on this iron that I hold in my hand. And again, he is holding out the High Talon's knife. It says, on this blade that I won in fair combat, I swear that I, Lucius Tarquin, will protect this station from any who might try to take it. Is that enough, Clan Leader Aerith, Captain Simeon? There is silence over the channel for a moment. And then Nishana says, it is enough for me, yes. I have trusted you with this once already, Lucius, and you have not let me down. I will continue to trust that you have our best interests, and not just ours, but all people in the Forge. I agree. And Captain Simeon says, I agree as well. I will order my fleet to withdraw, and Nishana says, as will I. Lucius says, thank you, all of you. Thank you for choosing a better way. Thank you for not fighting to the last. There's been so much fighting already, and so much loss. Let's bring an end to this conflict. And then he cuts the channel. I'm going to go ahead and mark 2 ticks of progress on this vow to find the artifact and stop the Ironhawks from gaining control of it and causing another cataclysm. I'm at 5 boxes of progress. I think there is an argument to be made that I should go ahead and roll on the progress of this to resolve it, but there is the potential that the Ironhawks might still come back and try to gain control of this station if they discover that someone has escaped with information. So I think this Dr. Petrov situation might need to get resolved before I can say for certainty that the artifact is safe from Ironhawk and, for that matter, Lodestar control. So I think as this happens, as this communication ends, Ukumesh turns and says, I have found your Dr. Petrov. And Lucius says, where is he? The chief architect points to a schematic of the station and says, he is on his way to the AI Central Chamber. He also accessed a considerable amount of data before he went. I'm surprised I did not notice, but I was distracted. With the return of power to the station, there are a great many things to do. But your friend is going to where Method is housed. Method should be waking soon. Why is he going there? And why did he download information on Paragons? Lucius looks around and kind of shrugs and says, I don't know. We actually don't know Dr. Petrov all that well. And then he sort of looks over at the still unconscious Adelie and says, he was really, really interested in Adelie and in Paragons in general. Could he be trying to do something with that information? And they kind of like look at the information, and it is all about creating, Paragons and that link between Ascendants and their artificial intelligence, which for humans means when they are linked with these artificial intelligences, that they gain this power. And Mila says, he always seemed a little bit fishy to me. Maybe he is trying to replicate what happened with Adelie and with Madame Brine and with all of these other paragons, and is trying to make himself a paragon. And Lucius looks at Lieutenant Mila and says, if that's the case, then we have to stop him. And he turns to go. I think at that point, Adelie is starting to sort of like come to a little bit, and she heard part of this, and she sits up and she says, what happened? And Lucius says, we think Dr. Petrov may be trying to make himself into a paragon. And Adelie says, he can't do that. It doesn't work like that. It's not something that you can force. You have to be chosen for it. And Lucius says, I think he may think he was chosen for it. But regardless, if he starts messing around with the station AI, it could cause all sorts of problems, including breaking this tenuous peace that we have with the Ironhawks and Lodestar. To which Adelie says, wait, what? And Lucius says, oh yeah, the fleets have stopped fighting. It's fine. I've got to get down there. I've got to stop him. And Lucius is going to turn to go, and Aurelia and Mila help Adelie to her feet. And Aurelia says, Lucius, we are coming with you. We've already done this once before. Let's do it again. And before they leave, Ukumesh says to Lucius, Lucius Tarquin, I heard the things that you said. Your people seem to think that this station is theirs for the taking, but it is not. It belongs to us. It belongs to the Ascendancy. And Lucius nods and says, I know that, Chief Architect. I had to tell them what they needed to hear in that moment to stop the fighting. If I told them that there was an Ascendant here that had control of the station, they might have turned their weapons on us just to try and take it from you. My people are not always the best. We don't always make the right choices. Oftentimes, we make all of the wrong choices. But I'm going to try and make sure that this time we do the right thing. And to do that, I need to go stop Dr. Petrov. Ukumesh nods and says, I believe we will have many conversations ahead of us, Lucius. I look forward to them. Now go, I will do what I can from here. But I have not been able to restore my connection with Method yet. Lucius nods and says, don't worry. We'll find out what's going on. And they're going to turn and head off towards that part of the station. So they are going to race through the station, heading towards where Dr. Petrov is located, which is a few decks down where the AI core is housed. They are rushing through, and to reflect that, we're going to go ahead and set a course. So when you follow a known route through perilous space or cross hazardous terrain or within a mysterious site, roll plus supply. +2 on this. Here we go. 8 on the action die, a 7 and a 1 on the challenge dice for a strong hit. You reach your destination and the situation there favors you. Take +1 momentum. That's going to take our momentum up to 6. So we reach this AI core room, and it's, I think, a lot like the one that they found on the flagship in the Ascendant wreckage. It is this room that is sloped down, and the floors and the walls are sort of obsidian, and there are these pillars all throughout it, which are the sort of like information data screen inputs. And at the very center of this room, at the bottom of this decline, there is this obsidian pillar and this crystalline orb, which at the moment is seated on the pillar itself. It's not even floating at this point. And as they enter this room, Dr. Petrov is down at the base of this pillar, and it looks like he is plugged into it with his portable computer, and he is trying to get it working again. And as they enter the room, he turns and looks back at them and just kind of goes, "Oh, you're here." And Lucius, resting a hand on the pistol at his side, says, "Dr. Petrov, mind telling me what you're doing?" And Dr. Petrov says, "I don't think you'd understand, kid." Lucius steps forward and says, "You know, I'm getting really tired of people calling me kid and looking down on me. Do you know how far I've traveled? Do you know how many people I've killed?" And at that, Dr. Petrov looks up, and there's a, tremor in his hand as he considers Lucius' words, as Lucius says, "I've added more to that score today. I've added more to that score in the last few weeks than I ever wanted to." Dr. Petrov, don't make me add one more. The scientist looks up at Lucius and then back to the console, and he says, "You don't understand. This is the key. Humanity, we escaped the Scourge, but we didn't really escape. We lost so much in the Exodus. We lost our advancements in technology. We lost our homeworlds and our places of power. We lost so much of what made us great. But we don't have to be without it anymore. Don't you understand, Tarquin? This ascendant technology, we've been using it, but we've been using a shell of it. We haven't really tapped into the potential of what it could be." He points a hand at Adelie and says, "She knows. She's seen it. She's tapping into that potential. Imagine what we could do as a species, as a society, if we all had access to that same power, if we all had access to those abilities. Think of the advancements that we could bring about. Think of the society we could build here in the Forge. We're survivors right now, barely holding on to the last remnants of a civilization that fell. But with this technology, with these powers, we could become something new again. We could grow and expand. We could be what we were." Lucius looks at him and says, "Doctor, this isn't our power to draw on. This isn't our technology to control. What has happened to Adelie and to others, it's not the future of humanity. It's a part of who we are right now, but it's not necessary for us to survive. We don't need this." With all their power and all their might, the Ascendants still lost to the same enemy that we did. We'd just be trading one path of technology and advancement for another. Dr. Petrov says, "What do you suggest? That we just leave this all behind? That we just forget what we've seen here? Forget the potential of this place?" Lucius says, not forget, but learn from, certainly. But we don't have the authority, we don't have the right to take the Ascendant's power from them, especially when they could live again. I don't know the details, but Ukamesh has some grand plan that he is working on, and if it means saving some of the Ascendants, if it means saving those lives and bringing back a whole civilization, how can we not? Wouldn't it be worth it to bring the Ascendants back to the Forge? Think of the things we could learn from them. Think of the things they could learn from us. Dr. Petrov looks at Lucius and says, "And you really think that they would just let us stay here in the Forge? Their territory, their worlds, that they'd be happy to share them with humanity? No, this is the future for us. We can claim this power here and now. You said you've killed before. What's one more? That Ascendant? If he's out of the picture, all of this is ours. Think of what we could do with it." Lucius looks at the scientist and says, "Dr. Petrov, the greatest thing that we have as a species, greatest thing we have as a people, as a community, as a civilization, is right here." And he gestures to Aurelia, to Adelie, to Mila. We have each other, and we have friends and family, loved ones, people that we can rely on, people that we can go through terrible, terrible things with. I understand that you may have suffered on that station before we found you. I don't really know you. I don't really know your story. But I don't want it to end like this. I don't want it to end in greed and jealousy and genocide. Because that's what you're suggesting. Please. Please help me show these Ascendants and show ourselves that we can choose to be better. Please. And Lucius is going to attempt to compel with heart. +2. 6 on the action die. A 3 and a 9 on the challenge dice. For a weak hit. So it's successful. He can be talked down, but their agreement comes with a demand or a complication. Envision their counteroffer. Petrov looks around, looks at Lucius, and says, "I recognize what you're saying, and I can give it all up, but I need this." And he looks at the orb. "I need this. Let me have this one. And I swear to you, I will use the powers gifted to me to make this better world that you're talking about. To help others make better choices. But I need this. I need it now. Here. Give me this, and I will help you." Lucius shakes his head and says, "No, Petrov. You don't understand. This isn't about you anymore. This is about the heart and soul of our people. That AI, it doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to any one of us. No, you cannot do this." Petrov sets his jaw and says, "On that, we have to disagree then." And then he reaches out and touches the orb before Lucius can draw his pistol, and a bright light flashes in the room. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures, and thanks so much to Syrinscape for the lovely ambient sounds and music throughout the episode. If you enjoyed the show, please tell anyone and everyone in your life about it. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really does help others find me. If you want to interact with me, my handle on Instagram and Twitter is @errantsolopod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.